Lev Vygotsky was born in 1896 in Orsha, Belarus, died in 1934 in Moscow, Russia. He studied at the Shanyavsky Moscow City People's University and Moscow State University. He developed the sociocultural theory and the ZPD. His work was based off of Western psychology and therefore was banned in the Soviet Union. But immediately after his death, he was declared one of the leading psychologists in the Soviet Union.
Key ideas for Vygotsky. Language is their primary form of information transmitted and for transmission and development. Vygotsky believes that language develops from the interaction of biological, cognitive, and environmental influences, and every child has a strong desire to communicate with others with a biological predisposition to communicate and preparedness. Language provides also a link between present and future, as well as express ideas, questions, and concepts of thinking. Cultural tools primarily uses language as the main tool for a child, though cultural tools can be something physical as well, such as computers, instruments, or anything of the culture of the time, though the language must be there to describe it to the child so they can add it to their toolkit. The last key idea is zone of proximal development, and it will be discussed in a later topic.
Okay, so this section is going to be about the zone of proximal development. As we talked about before, Vygotsky's writings focused on how a child's thinking is influenced by relationships with others who are more capable, knowledgeable, or expert than the learner. Vygotsky himself made the reasonable proposal that when a child is learning a new skill or solving a new problem, he or she can perform better if accompanied and helped by an expert than if performing alone. So basically, the zone of proximal development is the difference between what a learner can do without help and what he or she can do with help. Let's see here, I have a couple examples. Okay, so let's say Maria just entered college this semester and decided to take an introductory tennis course. Her class spends each week learning and practicing a different shot. Weeks go by and they learn how to properly serve and hit a backhand. During the week of learning the forehand, the instructor notices that Maria is very frustrated because she keeps hitting her forehand shots either into the net or far past the baseline. He examines her preparation and swing. He notices that her stance is perfect, she prepares early, she turns her torso appropriately, and she hits the ball at precisely the right height. However, he notices that she is still gripping her racket the same way she hits her backhand. So he goes over to her and shows her how to reposition her hand to fit a proper forehand, stressing that she should keep her index finger parallel to the racket. He models a good forehand for her and then assists her in changing her grip. With a little practice, Maria's forehand turns into a formidable weapon for her. In this case, Maria was in the zone of proximal development for successful hitting a forehand shot. She was doing everything else correctly, but just needed a little coaching and scaffolding from a more knowledgeable other to others succeed in the tasks. When that assistance was given, she became able to achieve her goal. Provided with appropriate support at the right moments, so too will students in classrooms be able to achieve tasks that would otherwise be too difficult for them. So a couple other short examples is when a 16-year-old is able to effectively drive forward and backward but cannot parallel park. Through targeted guidance from a teacher or the child is able to learn how to park. A child is struggling to learn how to read by working with the student to teach how to sound out words and use other recognition strategies. The child is able to learn to read. So those examples are great for relating back to Vygotsky's zone of proximal development in making sure that the difference between what a learner can do without help and what he or she can do with help is identified.
Discontinuity describes that, first of all, children at certain ages are required to have learned all prior skill sets appropriate to their age before progressing to the next stage of learning. And second of all, that there can be no variation. For example, if you are 5 years old, you can't learn a 6-year-old appropriate task, and you can't be behind in a task you should have learned at 5. Continuity, by contrast, as used by Vygotsky, is a more fluid theory in that a student can not only be behind or ahead of his peers in certain areas, but one can forget or learn something early, freely between levels. As far as some limitations go, Vygotsky, first of all, died at 38, very young, and one can argue that this deems most of his theories incomplete or not explored to their fullest extent. But the other real limitation is that despite this, Vygotsky is criticized for overemphasizing the importance of social action and interaction in development. He only focuses on biological growth and maturation in regards to our language.